It is a hot Minnesota day out today, but not nearly as hot as the car I'm about to reveal to you. I'm not even talking about this Mustang or the Beamer or even the C8 Corvette we've got parked here. I'm talking about a Camaro ZL1 1LE build that is fully track prepped. This thing is incredible, so stay tuned for the reveal. Before I officially show you the car, I just want to get a little background for you guys, but also for myself, because I started working at Patience relatively recently, and this was actually one of the cars that got me really excited to be here. When I did a tour of the facility, it was about halfway done, but Gary can give us the entire breakdown since this car dropped off, what, 6 months ago or so?
Yeah, a little over.
Okay, so was it a stock car before we got our hands on it?
Yep, he had used it for some TT stuff, which is time trials, basic. Car doesn't need to be track ready, just stock car, got to go out and drive it. And yeah, we transitioned it into what you see here.
Okay, and let's just do like a general breakdown before we start getting specific about things. What are the type of things that we've done on this car?
Typical track stuff. So the biggest thing is a roll cage, a race seat, some wing mounting, fuel cell. This one got a firewall, some Lexan windows. This one's a little bit above and beyond what you could do as a bare necessity, but certainly kind of the full all-around package for the class that this thing's going to race in.
And the really cool thing is there's not a ton of off-the-shelf. There's a lot of custom fabrication on this car. So this is the type of customer that drops it off at a shop like ours for half a year and lets these guys go wild with the modifications that we do. So that's the really exciting part, is all the unique touches to this car. Enough talking about it. Let's just start at the front. Right off the bat, you're seeing one of the most aggressive front ends on a car, and this is the 1LE package, so you have all the louvers and things on the sides. It looks awesome. We added the carbon fiber hood and arrow catches to it, and the race louvers, so again, just adding to that aggressive look. But really what we did is underneath the bumper. So Gary, what do you say, pull it off and show us exactly what you've done?
Yep, we can walk through that.
When we got the bumper off, it was really quick and easy. You saw Gary pull the arrow catches on top, and then these little Zeus clips here. You see the exterior of them, but this is what they mount to, and it's part of a custom system.
So Art talked about the Zeus clips there. This is what's on the back side of them. Just little tabs. They got a spring on them. Those quarter turn and lock in. You can see we've gotten rid of the big aluminum crash bar up here in lieu for a tubular bar. Super common to do. Clears up the front, makes it much easier to mount coolers to. We got a nice little toe strap mount right here, and to drop things like you see with the Zeus framework. This bar in particular, we have actually had some requests for, so this may be something that winds up being a product here in the near future.
Obviously that front end is awesome, but there's so much more going on. So Gary, what do we have on the fender area?
So this is a product made by a company called Race Louvers. They got a lot of CFD and wind tunnel research that's gone into these things. They function pretty well. It's a really popular product that you see at a lot of tracks. This is specifically to relieve a pressure area that forms underneath the fender and creates lift. This more deals with tire wake, but again, just more about extracting air out of the wheel tub. And then same thing as well as on the top. You got a pressure area that creates lift under the hood from the air coming in through the radiator. This relieves it, plus it plays a role in cooling. So definitely form and function. You're gonna see a lot of that in this car. It's not just kind of aesthetic things there. They actually matter on the track, which brings me to this carbon fiber door. Now, obviously through the camera, you guys can't see how light this is, but it is incredibly light. I would say, if I had to guess, 6 pounds? Under 5.
Under 5 pounds. That's awesome. And so that's a part that we obviously didn't make, but there's a lot of things that we had to do to kind of adapt it to this vehicle. So I'm going to climb inside, and Gary's going to show you the ins and outs of how this fits along with our custom cage that we put in this car.
So you mentioned the weight on the doors. The doors actually come in a little over 7 pounds, but we gutted them completely. We cut all the inner structure out of the door, and as you can see here, we've actually cut into the door, because on the Camaros, you cannot get a helmet out of the window line. So we actually cut the doors down to make it so that if there's an emergency, the driver can actually get out of the car. And then this is just a aluminum panel that we've made, done a little bead rolling on it, put a little accent piece in it. Some leather pulls. The leather's good for the fire resistance. You see guys using just regular like lanyards or straps for this. The problem is if you get a bad enough flash fire in the car, anything that's fabric will wind up burning up. So that's why we tend to use leather for everything.
And I also hear a rumor that these leather pieces are available on the PMF website as keychains. So they're super cool. What's the process to get this in here?
It's laser etched.
Laser etched.
They laser cut them and laser etch them, and it's got a little rivet in it.
Yeah.
We use them for all sorts of stuff, namely these, but they have become kind of a popular keychain.
Yeah, so in case you guys want one of these, just hop on our website and you can pick one up as well. I'm sure a lot of door cards you see are just a flat piece of aluminum. This one obviously has a large cutout in here, and there is a reason for that. It's to clear the cage design. So we've kind of taken the extra step with this cage to allow for more room for the driver to get out, and even if there's a passenger here eventually. So I want to show you exactly how awesome this looks once the door is shut. There you go. So we're talking about form and function again. It looks gorgeous in here and also gives you that added bonus of more space in the vehicle.
So speaking of the cage, it's obviously one of the biggest modifications you see in a race car. It's what we pride ourselves on, and what the business was really built on was our quality of our cages. If you really take a look at this thing, I mean, it's high and tight as it possibly gets. American Iron Extreme, which is the NASA series this is allowed to run in, allows us to actually weld the cage to the chassis in any location that it touches. So there's certain spots where you may see the addition of gussets like this for that exact reason. So these are not just to look good, they actually add additional rigidity to the car by tying the high points of the body into the cage. And then there's points on the A-pillar here that you can see where it touches all the way up and along the top, and there's multiple spots that it's welded in there as well. So not just for head clearance for the driver, but also a big deal for allowing us to mount the cage to multiple places on the chassis.
For how aggressive the front end of this car is, the rear end is actually kind of subdued until you start looking at all the little things. So right now it just looks like maybe a typical Camaro that might drive by with a big wing, but there are so many little nuances, including this right here. So Gary, what is this? What is that? And how do we use this?
So this is what you call a dry brake system. The idea of this is it allows for high-speed fueling, and there's zero chance of it to spill. So it's got this nice little collar on here with some O-rings. Once this collar is pulled back, the fuel's allowed to flow, and it works along with that. The nice thing about it is, that's it. Fuel's flowing, no opening the trunk. You see it a lot on endurance cars, but more and more guys are wanting it for even sprint cars just because of the fact that it makes it so much easier to fuel.
Now I want to show you exactly where that fuel is going, but before we do, I want to touch on the mounting system for this wing. So you see a carbon fiber deck lid, the carbon fiber wing, but what you might not notice is the system that mounts all of this and kind of a quick release. Now this was all fabricated by us, and then we got some aircraft pins to be able to hold it all together. But Gary, can you break it down and show us exactly how it works?
Yeah, so in the past, actually, what we've run into with most of our wing mounting systems is there's always this struggle of you want the wing to put the downforce to the chassis as effectively as possible. So you can mount the wing to the deck lid, but that means that the wing's pushing on the lid, which then in turn is pushing on a latch or bump stops. That's transferring in. You can do a chassis mount wing, but then you're dealing with stanchions passing through the deck lid. You either got to take the wing off to open the trunk, you got to pin the trunk so you take it off and slide it off. This is kind of a hybrid of all of them that we've come up with. And the nice thing about this is you pull the pins, wing stays on the lid still uses the factory hinges. You're not dealing with taking a trunk lid off, and you're not dealing with having multiple people have to move a lid out of the way in the pits that you might step on. And what you notice underneath is these big uprights, which are tied into the chassis here and in behind the tail light. So now you have a system where the wing, through the aircraft pins, is actually able to drive the downforce directly into the chassis. You don't have to do the lid or the wing separately to take them on and off. Just kind of an all-around system. It's something that we've been working toward for a while.
If you didn't think this thing was a full race car, you will now because of the giant fuel-safe fuel cell in the back. Now, Gary showed you how the fuel is going to be delivered. Normally, there's going to be a hose right here attaching to the radium surge tank, and then we've got a nice PMF custom bracket that holds the whole thing in. So let's get that out of here and just show you how this thing looks. And Gary, maybe you could touch on the functionality of it.
Yeah, so Fuel Safe is another one of the brands that we've partnered with and we sell quite a bit of. You know, industry leading as far as safety and fuel capacity. So it's got the bladder system inside, which is what makes it FIA approved. And then this is radium surge tank that's meant to work with the Fuel Safe cell. And what's going on in here is you've got up to 3 pumps inside a tank. So this has a pump that draws fuel from the cell and puts it into a smaller container inside. That way, as the car is taking corners and the fuel's sloshing back and forth, you don't run the risk of hitting a dry point where the fuel pickup doesn't have fuel to pick up because of the tank that's inside of this. Then you have your 2 additional pumps inside for actually making power to the car. Like Art said, there's some pieces missing here as well as kind of a mess of wiring. We can do everything from complete turnkey to just chassis work. This customer is going to finish the fuel system himself as well as take care of the wiring. So this car still does have the factory fuel tank in it at the moment, and that's something he'll take care of.
One thing you might notice is the glass is missing. That's because this thing is going to get Lexan in the front and rear. That's why we've made these custom supports here. And then you also see this top portion of the required firewall now that we're running that fuel cell. The one thing that you might not recognize is this little thing right here. And I gotta admit, I was confused too when I first saw it, but it is an awesome portion of the car and just a minor part of a huge system. So I'm gonna get Gary to break this thing down. I would argue this is the most exciting part of this car. All right, Gary, what are we working with here?
So this is the port for the AirJax system. Again, something you see commonly in endurance racing because of pitting, but more and more guys are running them in Sprint Series stuff because of the fact that it makes it so easy for serviceability. You can see one hiding right here behind the seat, and those are mounted to the main hoop. Stainless 3/8 lines on it, which takes a -6 fitting. The other 2 are hiding up front behind the fenders. Fill the system, whole car comes up, no more jacks, no more messing around with stands, just easy peasy.
And we are going to be able to show that feature off, right?
Oh yes,
okay.
Yes, we'll play with it.
Awesome. Now the AirJax are a little hard to see right now, so I'm going to get some inside footage of the car, but just breaking it down, there are 4 of them. There's one here, one at a distance right there, all of the piping that connects them, and you can actually see one sticking out of the race louver right there. So it's very well hidden, but a very integral part of this car and one of the biggest fabrication challenges just to get this thing perfectly set up the way that they're going to need it for the track. There's a ton of stuff on this car that I'm not even familiar with. That's because I'm a fan of race cars, but I typically don't get to work on them. The type of cars that I work on are kind of budget garage builds and those type of things. So little pieces like this are a little confusing to me. Safecraft push net release. Obviously this is connected to the Safecraft net, and this would be, really, what's the function of that?
So it's just a window net. The car goes over and over, keeps your arms inside the car.
Okay, so I presume if I push this button, this disconnects?
Yep.
Boom.
There it is.
Awesome. And then how about this little button? That is the seat eject, I assume.
That's actually CarTech's kill. So you have to have a kill that's able to be reached by a responder if they get to the car in time. A lot of people put them outside the car. In our past, we've seen some issues with that. In an accident, the switch breaks or it's not accessible. We like to put them on the cage themselves inside the car, but a spot that's still accessible from outside.
Since I'm somewhat unfamiliar to the world of actual race cars, there's a couple elements in here that I want to touch on, have Gary talk about. The Racetech seat, this is a really serious seat, and the AP Racing pedals down here, and exactly what we had to do to mount them, make them fit, and make them functional. So I'm going to crawl in the back of this car to get a better view, and then Gary's going to show you all the little ins and outs of what makes this the top of the line race seat in the market.
So one of the things that differentiates Racetech from all the other seats, and this is above and beyond everything else, is the fact that they have an integrated seat back support. Almost all sanctioning bodies require you to fix the back of the seat to the cage. But it requires you to do that by drilling holes in a composite seat. With Racetech, that's not the case. So this is their bracket. It's fully integrated into the back. You can bolt this in place. It is fully adjustable. As you can see, it's not quite set up yet because we'll do final fit up on this when the customer comes to pick up the car. But then this, 2 of these, clamp to the cage, bolt simply to the actual seat back mount. So while this is our favorite aspect of the Racetech seats, this right here is the customer's favorite aspect of the Racetech seat. This is a cooling vent. So just like your cool suit, you can actually pipe a fan into this, and this will keep the sweat from, we all know the area, flowing right through here, keeping your lower back and all of the related areas dry.
And is there any seat adjustment? I mean, I see the side rails here, but it doesn't look like they're sliders.
So yeah, no sliders, and there's a little bit of adjustability in seats, but seat mounting is really tough, especially when you've got seat back supports like that. So instead of making the seat adjustable for different drivers, that's why we have the AP pedal box on the floor. We actually make a billet bracket. You can see it kind of winking at you out from under here. And there's 2.5 inches of forward and backward options for mounting that pedal box. Much easier to pull those 4 bolts and move that around than it is to try to pull all the bolts on the seat and move this around.
As you can see, there is so much to this car, and really we can get into the nitty-gritty details and all the things that these guys have done over the last 6 months, but even this general overview is probably gonna make for a lengthy video. The one thing that I did promise you is we were gonna see those AirJax actuate, and I actually haven't gotten to see them do their thing quite yet. I've seen the testing portion of them, but this car hasn't been in the air since they've been installed. So right now, Gary's bringing over the nitrogen tank, and we're gonna do a full race car pop-up with this thing. Well, we got the nitrogen tank out here. Can you run us through a scenario of when you would use this? This would be a track day only type item.
Yep, I mean, honestly, really, once you got a bottle, you probably find yourself doing it in the garage too.
Yeah, or you roll up in a Cub Foods to fill up the air and you just...
Absolutely. No, there's nice little collars that slip over the jacks once they're up, so it's fixed in height. You can leave it up in the air and pull the nitrogen off of it. In this case, we actually spun a little piece on the lathe to you know, be a nice little air wand, something that you can grab onto and operate instead of just having the nozzle on it. So all in all, it's a pretty straightforward system. We are running a little low on pressure, so this thing isn't going to jump up the way it typically would, but we can certainly get a feel for it.
I thought that was cool. The best part is yet to come. It's the car coming down, and it happens very fast, suddenly, and loud. So I'm gonna prepare for it, and Gary, you pull the trigger. Realistically, we could spend the rest of the day talking about this car. We've shown you the highlights, some of the really impressive stuff, and we didn't even get into things like the giant brakes and the wheels and all of these things that make this car just a monster, an absolute monster, in addition to all the changes that we've made. But all in all, I hope you guys enjoy the content that we gave you with this. This isn't the last fully dedicated track car build that we're gonna do. It's just one of many. We have customers constantly hitting us up for builds like this. That was one of the purposes of this video, is just to show off the type of things we can do and what really gets us excited. I mean, this is such a cool project. I've had an amazing time just watching it get built up. I can't imagine actually working on it and doing this stuff. I assumed you've enjoyed yourself along the way?
I have. I kind of get to live vicariously through the customers. I mean, I don't get a chance to go out and play the way I used to, but you know, building these things and watching these guys, and when they send us footage of them on track, I mean, that's where the fun's really at.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, we don't build these cars to sit around. We build them to take a beating out on the track for the customer to really put it through the ringer. And so we hope to get that footage to you guys eventually. And by you subbing to our page, by sharing this stuff and getting really excited the way that we are about this, that helps us grow and helps us put that kind of footage out. So we appreciate you guys tuning into this. If you have any questions or comments about this build, just put them in the comments below, and we'll link in the description all of the pertinent people that we've worked with and products that we've used on this car. So again, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next video.
Thanks, guys.